Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Extra Point here on ESPN Denver 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and joined with me today are my cohorts, Jeremy, Robert, and Justice. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have a special guest. Our special guest today is a former NFL kicker punter for the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles, also played in NFL Europe in the AFL, and now he is the founder and CEO of the National Scouting Combine. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Mr. Jimmy Kibble. Jimmy, welcome to the Extra Point. How are we doing today?
Roland, thanks so much for having me on. It's a privilege to be with you guys.
So as I just did in the introduction, just kind of outlining your background, a lot of times kickers and punters don't get a lot of the love. So we got to give you some love here today, okay? So what I want to do is give you the opportunity to tell our audience what your journey was to getting to the NFL Combine and actually making your way into the NFL.
So, I was very lucky. I played for Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, and I was lucky enough to be there. I still tell people it was the best time to be at Virginia Tech was 95 to 2000. Finished my career in the national championship the year that Corey Moore, John Engelberger, Michael Vick, Andre Davis, Nick Sorensen, all those guys. You might recognize some of those names because they've been coaching in the playoffs and playing. And, I was fortunate to get invited to the Hula Bowl, went to the NFL Combine, and just kind of made my way to the New England Patriots. And unfortunately, I tore two ligaments in my kicking foot. So that kind of was a brief stop. I was fortunate to get to kick with Adam Vinatieri and Lee Johnson back in the day, and worked my way back up through the ranks from Arena Football 2 to Arena Football to NFL Europe in Cologne. Ended up back in the Eagles in 2005 behind David Akers. And I'll be the first to admit, there's no harder job than being a kicker and being behind two future Hall of Famers,
That
unless
is for sure.
If I was going to pull a Tanya Harding, to get one of their jobs, that was about the only way I was getting it, because those two guys were phenomenal kickers, great individuals, for everything they do off the field. And, it was a great learning experience. But, that whole experience gave me the drive and a desire to do what I do now, because while I was lucky enough to get there and kick in the preseasons and, get my 2 minutes of fame, it's a dog-eat-dog world.
So, Jimmy, starting with the National Scouting Combine here, kind of tell us and the audience what led you to found the National Scouting Combine. What kind of led you into that work?
It's interesting because my company, which is actually known as Beyond Sports LLC, we started out as a social network. While I was in NFL Europe, we started to identify that Facebook, MySpace, and LinkedIn were taking over back in 2005, 2006. And in 2007, I decided to create something for us, something to bridge the gap between the athletes and the coaches. And it went well. But at the same time, and I joke with my kids, if I had paid attention like I did after college, in college, I might have been valedictorian, because I started to apply myself to stuff that I liked doing. But what I noticed over the next several years was I was hearing the same things coming from the athletes that I was saying 5, 8, 10 years earlier in terms of everything regarding, combine testing. Is the event legit? Why am I paying? Who's getting the information? Where's it going? Is it worth the time and investment? My father was my agent, and we went all over the country. And, I was very fortunate during that time to, almost played in the AAFL, if you remember the All-American Football League, which I still think would have been a cool idea because it was sort of like college at the pro level. But my my partners and we all sat down and said, something's got to give. I want to create an event where people get exposure across the board. To this day, I can't believe I actually got the domain National Scouting Combine. And it was only early last year, almost a year ago, I trademarked the name National Scouting Combine. So technically, not that I want to pick on, the U.S. Army All-American stuff or the NFL, but we own the principal trademark to the words National Scouting Combine now to protect this investment, because I built it for the athletes.
Do you often, not to interrupt, but do you often get players who are confused between, whether you are a partner or a sister to the NFL Combine?
Every year. We get calls all the time. They're looking for Jeff Foster, from the actual National Invitational Camp. A lot of people thought that the National Scouting Combine was the NFL, but it's the National Invitational Camp, or the NIC. And, I joked with them. I was like, well, we're not that big, but, I've given so many players or agents, the phone number to be redirected to them. But it's interesting you bring that up, because we've never had the desire to go up against the NFL. We have no desire to compete with the NFL Combine. In fact, I created this to supplement what the NFL Combine is doing, because of the amount of players that don't get invited. Again, I was lucky. I got invited. Everything was covered. I mean, it's, as I said, the good old days. I mean, and it's only gotten better. Trust me, I've got a 100% cotton t-shirt up there that has the NFL Combine. Now they're walking around in all this cool, swag and stuff. I'm like, can I turn mine in? Because this stuff is cooler. But, I created it to give athletes, a true opportunity to perform in the same style of testing. Because let's be honest, the NFL Combine is the epitome of testing. The best athletes live in the NFL. I mean, I feel like that meme changed my mind. But we wanted to give the athletes the ability to get the same type of testing and get promoted from the NFL to the CFL down to, hopefully the XFL again, if the arena football ever comes across. My goal was to give you more or less the idea of, minimum expenditure, maximum exposure. And knock on wood, we've had athletes receive opportunities to get signed, get workouts, get tryouts, get 2-day waivers in every single league across the planet. And that's why I do what I do. Basically, we tell guys, you can show up and show out or shut up. It's really that simple.
There you go. There you go. Put the onus on the player. Provide the platform, but put the onus on the player to go out and showcase their talent.
We'll show you the door. You got to kick it in. What I was telling Roland a couple of weeks ago is that the one thing, and I think you guys will appreciate this, especially you, Robert, down at the Senior Bowl, half the battle with all these combines and events out there is that most of what you see and read and hear about is subjective to what we all think. What do we think about Tom Brady? What do we think about Aaron Rodgers? What do we think about Stephon Diggs and all these guys out there? But when it comes to the combine testing, what do the numbers tell us? And that's the thing that I've been focusing on for the last several years is if you guys were coming to our combine, how can I make this valuable to you so you can understand, where can I play? Where can I start? Where can I have the benefit of realizing this is where my athletic ability is right now, and then learn from it or use it to get to the appropriate level? And what I worked on was creating a proprietary algorithm that we're calling the NSC app, the Athletic Performance Predictor, because in essence, if I'm ever going to sit across from an NFL scout and CFL scout and an AFL scout, and eventually at the high school levels, the Division I, Division II, Division III coaches, I need to be able to tell you guys, why did this player grade out at the NFL level? Why they grade out at the CFL level? And I tell the players, the grade's not the end all be all. In fact, it should be an educational piece you use to improve yourself. But the grade can predict more or less, what type of athlete are you? So, Robert, I'll use the example. You're at the Senior Bowl right now. Everyone down there is good. I mean, they're the best of the best. But when it comes to when it comes time to the teams to draft, when it comes time, injuries come around in the season, and the director of player personnel is going, okay, I got 5 receivers here that are really good. What separates them? That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to help the athletes and the scouts understand what separates you from the next guy. What makes you more worthwhile to look at, to sign, to bring in based on your athletic ability. And so what we do is we cut through all the tape, get down to the brass tacks of what do the numbers tell us. And that's really become sort of the foundation of the National Scouting Combine, is to help these athletes figure out where do they exist as of today or when they do the testing. How can they improve from it? But also for the coaches, if you're looking at 4 or 5 guys on film that are good, what's that separating factor that's going to make it that much, more intriguing about assigning a guy? And at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. I can't tell you if your player fits into the program, whether I'm looking at Riviera or Belichick or any of these guys. I can't say, oh yeah, this guy's a good fit for your team. That's for you and your scouts to decide based on their game film. We're going to take a step back and tell you who are the absolute best athletes, because, the guys at the Division I levels, the guys at the NFL seem to be able to find the best athletes and turn them into phenomenal players.
Hey, Jimmy, I just want to circle back to what you said earlier. You had the great opportunity to learn behind Adam Vinatieri and David Akers, 2 of the greatest kickers to, ever step into the NFL. Was there anything that they taught you while you were under them that you looked to, kind of master and incorporate into your game and kind of take with you and to teach to other kickers that you've trained?
That's a really good question, because if you ever have a chance to talk to more kickers, I know we're not the coolest bunch in the group to hang out with. It's really a mind game. My experience was, as much as I loved Adam and David, Lee Johnson, Louis Aguiar, and some of the guys that I got to kick against, on Sean Sweesum, and so on and so forth. I played with Shane Graham at Virginia Tech, who played in a number of NFL teams, coaches down in Florida now. If I learned anything, it was how to master the mental side of things, because, look, you're coming into the league, you're 21, 22, 23, just full of piss and vinegar and ready to just, I'm in the league and I'm going to be incredible and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you realize everyone kicks as good as you. Everyone throws as good as you. It was learning the mental side to actually relax, not so much get caught up in the process. And really what I learned more so was from watching them, watching how they handled themselves, watching how they approached every kick, watching everything from their warm up to the technique, to the follow through, to how they walked off the field. It was really a study session. When you're lucky enough, Tom Brady and I played against each other in the Hula Bowl. We ended up in the Patriots, at the same year together. You look at guys like that who just, no one saw behind the scenes how much he was getting teased back then. No one's teasing him now, obviously, but he worked his ass off. I mean, all the little things he did. David Akers was like that. Adam Vinatieri, both of them. I'll be honest, there was really never that, hey, here's what you got to do to become better, because we're all fighting for each other's jobs. I could tell you some stories, off air about, things that have happened in other camps and other things that I've heard from other kickers. Because it really, it gets back to that dog eat dog world. In the NFL, it's not like other sports. You miss a kick here, you miss a pass, every little thing goes against you. So, being a young guy, I was lucky enough, my whole family's, law enforcement, medical. My father was really on top of what are you going to do to learn? Go in there, not with the idea that I got to beat this guy out. Learn how he got there first. And honestly, that's what I did is I studied those guys, and I've kind of taken that into what I do now. It's, as they say, everyone's under the microscope. When you're at these events, especially now with social media and all the cameras that are around, everyone's looking for that little thing. What's that little characteristic? Back then we had to use our own eyes because we weren't walking around with cell phones. We couldn't video record all this stuff. So it was more of a mental challenge to try to remember, take notes, and figure out, why are these guys some of the best? And honestly, half of it was their character. It was just who they were. They would have given their shirt off, off their back to someone else. To me, that's what made them an even better kicker. Not to mention they were incredible as it was. It was the fact that they were all around people.
Yeah, Jimmy. Just going back to, I just want to harp on the mental aspect of the game, just like you mentioned. When it comes to the NFL Combine, of course, they have the Wonderlic test. Is that something that you guys flush out at the National, Scouting Combine from the mental aspect, or you just focus more so on the numbers?
We're more so focused on the numbers. We've thought about bringing the Wonderlic test. In fact, I was talking with an NFL scout about a week ago about all the tests they go through now. I still remember the New York Giants test. It was like this thick. It was 400 questions. And I remember getting about halfway through and I'm going, this is all the same stuff, just over and over in different ways. I was more of the analytical thinking. And I remember going, do I really have to turn this in? Because I've already answered this 6 times, just different ways. And a lot of it is to see how you handle it. But I was joking with the scout and I said, it's funny. I'm not so sure these tests are even necessary anymore, because you can literally spend about 10 minutes on someone's social media and figure out what type of person they are. We had a good laugh about it. For us, I figure by the time that we're finding that second and third tier guy. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Yes, we get a couple of guys that are just, they should have been, looked at by the NFL. For the most part, we're finding those diamonds in the rough. That's why I love the small school player, especially this year more than ever, for the amount of players that could get screwed. There was a big call today with the NFL about whether or not they'll even be allowed into the NFL this year. Everyone D1 AA and below, and you got to think, that's a punch to the gut. We don't do the test just because I figure if they get to that level, they're going to have enough testing to do, when they get there, because why is my test better than anyone else's?
So, Jimmy, I'm very curious here, because one of the things that you talked about is the journey piece, especially your background in the journey. I'm quite sure you see a lot of players that show up to the National Scouting Combine and they have their own story. And their journey, definitely probably has taken them in a variation of different directions. What do you do, or what do you and your staff do to communicate with those players that as long as you're following a journey, they can go ahead and continue to work hard and hopefully make their way into the NFL without being discouraged?
Everyone has a story to tell. I apologize. Daughter was trying to call.
You're a busy man. You're a busy man.
Sorry. Everyone has a story. That's what makes this unique. And I'll tell you, that's one of the things we try to touch on with the National Scouting Combine. I'm sure you guys will appreciate the fact that almost all the events out there outside of the Shrine Bowl, the East-West Shrine Game, Senior Bowl, NFL Combine, and a few others, most of the combines take place in one day. You're there, you show up, you're gone. There's not a lot of time. And the experience for us really begins when you start to commit to the event. We want to tell your story. That's again where we try to separate ourselves from other events, because if you guys are coming to the event, I want to help tell your story. I want to find out what's unique about you. What is something about you as a person, you as a player, that might be intriguing to a scout? might be intriguing to a team. Because again, we're promoting it from the NFL to the indoor teams to over in Europe. We want to help you get that out there. We want to expose you to all the different outlets that can help you not just get the name out there, but learn more about you, help promote you, connect you with, whether it's with guys like you to tell their stories, with sports agent, with marketing and branding experts, the educational part of this, no one was ever doing that for me. This is kind of where I take off my CEO hat per se and put on my dad hat. I've got 4 kids. They're all athletes, very competitive household. Not much has changed over the last 20 to 25 years when it comes to recruiting, scouting, and everything out there for the athletes. We're trying to change that. We're trying to change that landscape a little bit. Even at the high school level, we ran a big event this past summer. We were trying to do as many interviews with players as we could leading up to the event. We want to continue to educate them after the fact. But it really comes down to, what do you need to know to be successful on the field, off the field? How can we give you that information in terms of a grade that will hopefully motivate you? I mean, that's most of the scouts out there. They want the go-getter. They want the guy or the girl, depending on what sport we're testing at the time. They want to find out who's really motivated. And that's another aspect of our grade, because motivation really comes down to training and preparation. For all the guys that end up going to the NFL Combine, the ones that put in 110% leading up to that, or to the Senior Bowl, or to anywhere else, they stand out. And again, when we all played, assuming that we're all somewhere, older than the guys we're watching on TV right now, back then, God-given talent was what, the Bo Jacksons and the Jerry Rices and, all those guys stood out because they were phenomenal athletes. Now everyone's got access to weights, supplements, training programs. But I still think there's a huge divide, because it's who's taking advantage of it and who's not. That's where our numbers come out. But we try to combine that with, why are you unique? Why should a scout be looking at you? Why should they listen to your story?
Good deal. So for our audience here, can you go ahead and give a quick summation of the dates and the times, and what folks should be looking forward to with the National Scouting Combine that's coming up here in March?
So, the fact that the NFL Combine is not taking place this year and will be taking place in more of like a pro day style. I mean, I'm not even sure everyone knows exactly how everything is going to lay out. It puts us in a very unique position, because we always run the event the week leading up to, or we have an overlap with, the NFL Combine. This year, we moved it to March 8th through the 11th. Like the NFL Combine, we bring in specific positions the night before. So we'll bring in offense and defensive line and running backs Sunday, put them through the measurements, interviews, whatever scouts or media show up, we give them access. We'll have some, any speakers or, partners that can educate, because it really is about maximizing that time to give them as much information as possible so that we can continue that conversation after the event. Linebackers and defensive backs come in Monday and they go Tuesday. Wide receivers, quarterbacks, and tight ends come in Tuesday, they go Wednesday. And then, of course, being a little biased, we brought kickers back because we are at a world-class facility called Grand Park. I haven't had kickers at our event in 6 years. Breaks my heart, but not a lot of facilities are built for it. But Grand Parks is where the Indianapolis Colts host their annual training camp. You got to see this facility. It's got 3 major fields indoors.
Right.
And unfortunately, we can't punt. Barring what happens with the weather, we may invite some punters last minute. But kickers will come in Wednesday the 10th, and they will go on the 11th. And we try to keep to the same style of combine that the NFL Combine runs. We've got incredible partners like Fusion Sport, with the laser timing system, their smart speed database and everything we can provide is unbelievable. Trazer, for those of you that don't know what Tracer is, easiest way I can summarize it, it's like we on steroids. It'll tell you more about your body. But to put in perspective how important this is, for the last 4 years, the 2 teams that have played in the national championship for college are all Tracer clients. So if you guys come to Indy, you'll see why that's so important. And a slew of other partners that just make this event amazing. It's for the athletes. Everything we do is for them. Everything we do is to give them what I didn't have access to and what all of my predecessors never had access to. And that is to telling their story, the closest experience to the NFL, dare I say, the NFL Combine as possible. We don't rush them through it like a lot of other events. And we give them, that grade. They will leave knowing where can they physically compete? Where can they take their abilities? No other combine can tell you when you leave that combine, hey, look, you graded at the CFL. Not saying you can't play at the NFL level, but right now we could confidently tell any CFL team you could step on the field. If you have what they're looking for as a football player, this is where you're going to have the most success starting, and if you're not happy with it, get back in the gym, get with the trainer, get with the speed coach, and get it done.
Good deal. That is great to know. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening into The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600, and we are joined today with founder, CEO of the National Scouting Combine, former NFL kicker punter, Jimmy Kibble. And Jimmy, thank you very much for taking the time to give us a thorough breakdown of your journey and why you started the National Scouting Combine. And just for our listeners out there, just want to reemphasize, the National Scouting Combine is going to take place in Indy March 8th through the 11th. So hopefully we'll have some great information that we can continue to push out there for all of you, so you can pay attention to some of these diamonds in the rough, as Jimmy likes to call it. And I love that you provided that perspective, because there are some diamonds in the roughs out there. They just need a platform to showcase their talent, and that's what you're providing. So thank you very much, Jimmy. On behalf of my colleagues, I know I'm definitely looking forward to heading out your direction at the National Scouting Combine, looking at the talent, assessing, and whatever we can do to help once again showcase your platform. Thank you very much for joining us here today on The Extra Point.
Thank you so much, guys. Look forward to meeting you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, have a great week.